Hello and welcome. You're watching Head to Head. I'm Kharytonov with UATV. After several months of pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong, the unrest shows no sign of stopping. What started as a movement against a controversial law has expanded into something much bigger. Protesters are now demanding greater democracy and an inquiry into alleged police brutality during the past demonstrations. As unrest intensifies, Beijing's tone is becoming increasingly heated. To talk more about the current situation in Hong Kong, we welcome to our studio today Arthur Kharytonov, main coordinator of the Free Hong Kong Center. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
I'm going to dive right in and say there's been a lot of protests in the past 6 months. We had the French Yellow Vest. We had the Moscow protest about the Moscow Duma elections. We've had unrest in Kashmir, and the whole time Hong Kong has also been in the background. Is there a common denominator to any of these protests?
I think yes, because tendencies in our this year is very, very unique. And actually, we're joking that it's like 2090 is a kind of new 2040 because a lot of protests there. But if you would look on Hong Kong closely, you would see that it's more about, outcomes of umbrella revolution. Maybe not just about umbrella revolution, but more about what didn't happen at the time. Because what people are saying in Hong Kong, umbrella revolution was great, but unfortunately the results of it wasn't so successful as it was in Ukraine, for example.
It's interesting that you mentioned 2014 because that was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
We've seen pictures of the protests in Hong Kong with Ukrainian flags popping up. We know earlier last month they had a public showing of Winter on Fire, and the protester seems to be identifying very strongly with Ukraine's situation in 2014. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, it's true. Actually, even during the Umbrella Revolution 2040, it was a very big influence of Ukraine, and we could see different part of our revolution of dignity there. But right now, it's absolutely obvious that people in Hong Kong are taking a lot of inspiration from Ukraine. First of all, because they're watching a Winter on Fire documentary, and secondly, we have very good contact right now. So what they're saying is that Ukrainians really could understand what is going on in Hong Kong, could understand the feelings of people. Because if we would compare the fight of Ukraine against Soviet Union and Russia, we would see that actually it's the same in the fight of Hong Kong people who are actually very European-minded against pro-communistic minded mainland China.
So tell me a little bit about the contact, because the protests in Hong Kong apparently have no leadership structure, much like the Yellow Vest in France. Who are you talking with? Who is your organization talking with?
Well, so I could say that it's really a huge number of organizations which are right now taking part in the protest. But of course, we have a few leaders, leaders from previous revolution, umbrella movement, and current new people who are involved in the process. Of course, we are in contact with Joshua Wong, with Democista Party, we are in contact with the Aspiration Party, but it's very hard to say that it's something about organizational stuff. It's more about this very big movement and specific tactic, be water, because of course when it's different spots in the city and different Maidans, not just one square where you could be and fight for freedom, but you're on every street and you know how to be like water. So it's actually very interesting. But of course, we are contacting a lot with these parties and of course with Classical Democratic Party of Hong Kong, because I think that the influence of this party is very important too. And what we could see from the perspective of, for example, Martin Lee or Emily Lau, of course, they are doing a really great job within all political stuff, classical one. But why the world is so looking on Hong Kong? Because the movement, previous one and this one, led by very young people, very, very young people. And it's really great, I could say, because it's movement of absolutely new generation.
Now, you were talking about the idea of being like water. I'd like you to expand on that a little bit. To communicate how the water should flow, protesters are most likely using social media. Now, what we saw in Kashmir is that there's been social media shutdown. China has not shut down social media in Hong Kong yet?
Yeah, well, they're trying, of course, they're trying to ban VPN and other stuff. But of course, Hong Kong is not China in the sense of law. And of course, they have own basic law, own rights. And of course, it's very hard to ban in the way how China did it. because there are no big great Chinese firewall, and of course people are using a lot of messenger, social media. But what we could see right now is that people started not to use a lot, for example, Facebook or WhatsApp, because previously we have seen a lot of hack attacks on these resources. But what is interesting is that Hong Kongers are using Telegram a lot, really a lot. And if we would compare it with Ukraine, for example, and even with Russia, we could see that in our region, Telegram is most popular social media when VKontakte was banned by Ukrainian government. So it's very interesting to see that we even in Telegram could find mutual points, and a lot of Ukrainians right now following special Hong Kong protest channels where people are writing a lot of news in English, and Ukrainians could read it and understand what is going on there.
That's interesting too, because they are communicating a great deal in English, so the outside world knows what's going on.
Yeah. It's very important, and what is good is that, like, in the case of umbrella movement, it wasn't not so much contact in English, but currently we could see that people are doing a really great job to share emotions within all the world, and that's why we could find a lot of information very, very urgently and share it. Because actually, I think we would talk today about extradition law, of course, but you know that it's not a secret that Kharytonov told that she's ready to withdraw it, and also started to talk that, oh, finally Hong Kong people won, but actually not, because as they told me that the lawsuit was dead before it, and we couldn't see that it's something real, because Hong Kong was talking about 5 demands, not just about extradition law. But
no, it's gone beyond the 5 demands.
Yeah, just one point, but all of them understood, like previously, that this lawsuit has no way, because even establishment groups in Hong Kong was against it, because they understood, like for them it was very, very clear that if this lawsuit would be passed and all would be okay with it, it would be very, very bad, first of all, for establishment groups, for business, because everybody, you, me, and all of us could be sent to China, to prison. And nobody wants to do it if they want to provide business.
Now, someone in your situation, what's your responsibility? If we're making comparisons between global, protest movements, 2014 in Ukraine, the fall of the Berlin Wall, that ended positive. Tiananmen Square, and what might happen now in Hong Kong, there are dire repercussions. Someone in your position, do you have to be cautious about giving advice, because you don't, the nature of the beast is different when we're dealing with China?
From one hand, yes. From other hand, no, because China is actually the same Russia, but with another context. And what they're doing, they're using a lot of the same tools, how to punch people and all these attacks and so on. So a lot of Hong Kongers actually in social media asking not just me, but all of us, hey guys, what do you think, how to do, and which kind of tools we could use to secure ourselves from this abuse from police side. So of course it's very important to take this experience, but you're right that Hong Kong situation, it's not about Ukraine in the sense of like our sovereignty, because Ukraine is an independent country, and in 2014, 2016 we fight it against Yanukovych, which was just a simple dictator. But in Hong Kong context, they are fighting for absolutely another kind of relations, because it's international relations. But from other hand, Hong Kong has very specific status, and according to joint declaration between China and Britain, till 2047, it would be absolutely autonomic special region. So let's say that what they're trying to do is, first of all, to make China recognize international law. And of course, people are thinking about something more than just 5 demands. But of course, politicians and our activists understanding that just one main goal of all of that is to secure their right to be autonomic from China. And of course, secondly, to take this universal suffrage, and maybe after 2047 or in 2047, to make referenda and ask people what to do next. Because nobody asked Hong Kong about in previous years what to do, and it was like an object between China and Britain. But we have millions of people, European-minded people, who are absolutely another from Chinese psychology, I mean, in legal sphere and so on. And that's why people are fighting for like absolutely simple stuff for democratic countries. I mean, universal suffrage.
Well, you've been watching this for quite some time. Tell me a little bit about your organization.
Yeah. So I'm president of Liberal Democratic League of Ukraine. It's like quite active youth liberal organization, not just in Ukraine, but all over the world. And we have special branch in our organization called Free Hong Kong Center. And what we are doing, firstly, we are sharing information about Hong Kong to Ukrainians. But secondly, we are trying to send a message to Hong Kong that it's not alone. Because firstly, it was like first, impression that the bridge between Ukraine and Hong Kong is a little bit like not real. But currently we could understand this very good line because a lot of Ukrainians are following our social media pages, yeah, and Hong Kongers are following it. They keep in touch and always exchange different knowledges, and it's very great. Secondly, it's more about media context because, in 2017, after chief executive elections, like fake elections in Hong Kong, that day I was in Hong Kong, and when I come to Ukraine, I have seen all what is going on in Hong Kong, and I understand that it's my mission, like I ought as a person, as an activist, to share more about Hong Kong situation with Ukraine. But a lot of media told me that it's something not interesting. We are not ready to follow Hong Kong situation because it's very far away. And 3 years, I could say, we are fighting for this, to break this wall and to make this information be heard by Ukrainians. And we done it actually, because I think that the majority of main media right now following the situation and actually taking a lot of interviews with Hong Kong activists. And even yesterday, Joshua Wong met Vladimir Klitschko in Berlin. So we could talk a lot about Vladimir Klitschko's personality in Ukraine politics, but what is interesting is that currently Ukraine and Hong Kong very connected, and day by day we would be more and more connected. So it's just a point of the time when it would be. But what I could add to it is that we are really willing to push forward our government and to make Hong Kong issue global for Ukraine. We are really urged to see official position of Ukraine because, well, it was like first 100 days of president, newly elected, we have new parliament, but let's ask them to start to work on the field because my personal position is that our current government and our new president and all democracy in Ukraine are possible just because of revolution of dignity. And let's respect it, and let's say to people who are fighting as well as we fight it a few years ago, that they're not alone, and that we have very, very strong principles.
That's all the time we have today. I guess to summarize, people in Hong Kong are trying to break the wheel of communism without reinventing the wheel of protest, and they're getting some great advice from Ukrainians.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was Artur Kharytonov, main coordinator of the Free Hong Kong Center. Stay with us for more with UATV.